the side of entrepreneurship that I think isn't talked about a lot in the glitz and glamour and sexification of entrepreneurship is why entrepreneurs do what they do, especially the successful ones that you see in their 40s, their late 30s, 50s. You know, we do this for family. We do this for our descendants, the people coming after us, you know, the things and people we care about. And so this, as we transition to these next stories, I really just want to preface this that for those of you out there who are parents, we're pulling this stuff up to talk to you about the choices you have to make on the parental and your family level, not just how to succeed in business, because as we've talked about, it's coming for your business, but this nonsense is not just coming for your business. It's coming for your family. And you're going to have a choice to make, whether you're a Christian, a Buddhist, a Muslim, an atheist, or a furry. Yeah. And so let's talk about these middle schoolers. So we got two different segments here. First, it's 5 middle school female athletes in West Virginia. They are competing in track and field, in particular the shot put. And they refuse to throw shot put together against a male who is identifying as Becky Pepper Jackson. What a name, Becky Pepper Jackson. And so we got a clip here, audio and video here.
Yeah, they're scratching out, right?
They're scratching out, yeah. Cole's always mutes his brother. He just doesn't like X. Okay, well.
Yeah, there's no sound.
So be it. It's probably Trevor's fault. Was there sound when you played it? Earlier? Yeah. The clip I saw previously, I didn't play it this morning with audio, so I don't know. This wasn't the first time I saw it. But as you can see here, they're all lining up and they're out. And good for them, right? Like, think about what these young girls are having to deal with, you know, just mentally.
Well, I mean, I've even seen it on the local level, soccer team, where there was a boy playing on the girls' teams. So that same city league this year decided that they were just going to do all co-ed teams because they didn't know how to tackle it.
Yep.
They didn't want to lay the line down. Wow. What I think is more interesting about this, and more the topic why we bring it to you guys as entrepreneurs. When I was, coming up in business over the last 17 years, I was always told, like, you just keep politics out of it. You just keep your personal opinions out of it. And I just don't think you have that choice anymore, right? Like one of the beautiful things about capitalism and about business is the fact that you can build a tribe of people who align with your core values. And if you don't like that, then don't work for me. Right. But this whole DEI movement has made it so that I have to hide my values and be, overly accepting of everybody and everything that they believe, and basically shelf, because as the business owner, I have to shelf my ideas. Hey, if you want to come work for me and our values don't align, and just know that I'm not going to change the way that I am and what I talk about and the things that I talk about on my podcast and my platform. If that offends you, like, cool, don't work for me. And I think that's interesting where we're at, where the idea of business is treated a lot more like this, like a socialism kind of structure where you can, everybody, the tribe, ultimately, we're going to do what's better for everybody. Don't rock the boat. Don't offend anybody. And that's just not true or accurate or why anybody would want to go be an entrepreneur.
Right. Right. Now let's look at the second clip. And then I have a particular thought, just even in response to that lines up with that. So this comes by way of Ian Miles Chong, and it's some students at Mount Nebo High School in Payson, Utah. They staged a mass walkout from school to protest the school's tolerance of quote unquote furries. The students say that those who participate in the furry subculture are not only tolerated to act out their fantasies by dressing up in outfits that violate the school's district's dress code, but also that they bite, scratch, bark, and spray air freshener on other students who are just there to learn. The school's tolerance of furries has been extremely disruptive and even extends to putting a litter box in the girls' bathroom. The administrators deny the veracity of these complaints, claiming that the problem has been blown out of proportion. The school was previously in the news after a teacher who promoted climate change gave her students bugs to eat for extra credit. Let's see if this one has some audio of students protesting.
So are they wearing a mask every day?
Yes. But every time they go, they're always just wearing a mask. But the principal finally stood up and banned those stuff.
But they still wear them every day,
Yeah,
and they don't get in trouble. The principal doesn't make them get in trouble.
Yeah. All the principal says is just be kind, be nice, be nice.
Hundreds of kids is.
What's the point of dressing up like a furry?
It's just
I don't know. They think they're so cool that they want to
get a lot of
be.
attention. I think they want attention. So people can come at them and just look at them and think that they're so cool.
Okay.
Also,
Are you guys going to be in trouble for walking out of school today?
no, maybe we might. If we go back on school grounds, we will get in trouble.
Hopefully not. We're standing for our rights. We're standing for what the furries
All right,
are.
pause it. So listen to the little girl. The last little bit. You don't have to play it. She said, "We're standing up for our rights because this is wrong." And so just what you said.
So the majority is made to feel uncomfortable for a couple people. I can't imagine it's that many. It's maybe 10, if I'm guessing. But that, to say it's blown out of proportion, it says hundreds. So I don't know that to be true, but that was a decent amount of kids right there.
Decent amount of kids, for sure. And the thing that really strikes me, I'm going to hit this from two levels. One, on a sort of parental and practical level, relationship level, which is like these young girls, they scratch in the shot put. These students in Utah walk out. I don't want to criticize because I don't know all the context, and I'm only seeing the children. But for me, when I'm thinking about the entrepreneurs we speak to, you guys, it's time for you to stand up. Like, these little kids can't articulate that, right? They can't articulate their arguments, their ideas, and why their positions and why they're right. They just know it's wrong, and they're just doing it because they have that lens on things. But it did bother me that it took the kids to walk out of school. Now, granted, I'm sure their parents knew, right? Hopefully. But at what point are we going to decide that, hey, we're not going to keep sending our kids to the wolves, so to speak, and wait for them to rise up as, brave sheep, but we're actually going to be shepherds. We're going to go there. And I may miss my meeting today. I just might do that because that's actually why I do this in the first place. It's so I can have this freedom, this time freedom, as we talk about, and purpose freedom. Because it's not going to be, the folly would actually be allowing the kids to fight this battle. That would be great folly. And so that part gets me, but there's a spiritual component to this. If you're listening to our pod, you consume other news outlets, and you're like, this is ridiculous. This is absolutely ridiculous. But I'm going to take you guys to church here for a second.
Get them preach.
And I'm going to show you something in the book of Romans, in particular, chapter 1. I'm going to save you some of the reading, but here's a very interesting, not even interesting, this is a truth. So it says, for since the creation of the world, his invisible attributes, that is, he being God, his eternal power and divine nature have been clearly perceived, being understood by what has been made, so that they are without excuse. So what it's saying is you can look around the world, you can look at this creation and see that there's a creator behind it. We are without excuse for not thinking, not understanding that there's a creator. But here's the thing. For even though they knew God, people that can look around and see it, they did not honor God as God or give thanks. But instead, they became futile in their reasonings, and their senseless hearts were darkened. Claiming to be wise, they became fools, and they exchanged the glory of the incorruptible God for an image in the form of corruptible mankind, or birds, or four-footed animals, or crawling creatures. Sounds a little bit like furries. Therefore, God gave them up to vile impurity in the lust of their hearts, so that their bodies would be dishonored among them. For they exchanged the truth of God for falsehood and worship and serve the creature rather than the Creator, who is blessed forever. So what that's saying is, because we live in this world where we refuse to acknowledge God, God is actually allowing his creation to fall under the judgment to ridiculous worship of the creatures that they want to worship. And I'm going to move down to two other verses. And it says, for this reason, God gave them over to degrading passions. For their women exchanged natural relations for that which is contrary to nature. And likewise, men too abandoned natural relations with women and burned in their desire toward one another, males with males committing shameful acts. We know what this is referring to, right? And just as they did not see fit to acknowledge God, God gave them up to a depraved mind to do those things which are not proper. People being filled with all unrighteousness, wickedness, greed, evil, full of envy, murder, strife, deceit, malice. They're gossips, slanderers, so on and so forth. And so I'm like, I see extremely out of breath for some reason. But the point being is that part of why this is happening, part of why kids are now being allowed to run around schools and have litter boxes in their bathrooms, and adults are consenting to this, and what we're going to cover with Columbia, part of why all of this is happening is because we as the creation refuse to acknowledge God, and instead we want to be God. And it doesn't work that way. It's the equivalent of a virus is in the system and the machine is going haywire. And it's our fault because we refuse to acknowledge God. We refuse to acknowledge, we're quick to point out when there's a mass shooting, this is evil and all these things. You can't have God. You can't have evil. You can't have that without God.
Yeah. There has to be the dichotomy of it.
100%.
So it's funny because then there's the question for people who don't believe, which is, well, why does God let this stuff happen then? Yeah. What's your response to that?
Well, God doesn't let this stuff happen. First of all,
right.
We will be held account to this. This is actually the holding of account. But man does have a choice. If you wanted us to be robots, then you would be like, well, that God, that creator didn't give us any freedom. He doesn't love us. He doesn't do, that sucks. So this is what you get. You have the freedom to make a choice, to honor God, to do things his way, or to go the opposite way. But you will reap what you sow.
And it can't be love.
Yeah.
If you don't have the choice.
Yeah, 100%.
Right. So
100%. Yeah. Love is always a choice, right? Love is a verb, not a noun. Right?
But it's just always so interesting because when things go good, people want to tout themselves.
100%.
When things go bad,
where's God?
They want to blame God.
Where's God at?
And you can't blame him for the bad if you're not going to simultaneously give him credit for all the good.
Yeah.
And that is the disconnect.
100%.
Which is you want this magical God to come in and sweep you up when things are terrible.
Right.
But when things are good, you don't want to honor God. And to your point, what does that mean to honor God?
Right.
How do we do that?
Well, it starts by acknowledging his existence. It starts by acknowledging that you can look around this world, and if you come to the conclusion that this just happened randomly, you're already off track. All you got to do is look in the mirror at your own eyeballs, right? All you got to do is look at the world around you. That's what it was saying.
Why are you looking so intensely at Trevor right now?
These things are clearly evident to us. They're clearly evident to us, to young children, and so part of why this is happening is because you want to reject the very thing that holds it all together, and you're like, why is it falling apart? That's why, and it's really sad to see that our children in particular are having to deal with this, man. And so you guys out there, like, stand in the gap for the children, because especially those of you who know the truth. So,
do you have the other side of that interview, the furry interview?
Yeah. So I think there's one with the actual furry. So I'm pretty sure this is a furry.
Thank you.
This is Strudel, a member of the furry fandom. Though they've been a furry for over a decade, they have their own opinions.
It's crazy that it's escalated to this point where these kids are being so distracting to their peers that their peers want to stage a walkout. So to have, the next generation kind of muddy our name and not represent it very well, it is kind of disappointing.
Strudel believes there should be some limits.
Continue doing things you like, continue dressing up, continue making art, but maybe let's keep it outside of school hours.
As for the school, Sorensen says they have one main goal.
We want every student to feel safe when they come to school, and we want students to get along. In fact, we want adults to get along.
Okay, so the district says they've worked with some students whose dress and appearance.
Yeah.
I have no words.
Yeah. And so like So going just back to the scripture one more time, the result of rejecting God, even the willingness to acknowledge God, or even the space that God can exist, is that your passions are degraded, your lusts become improper, and your minds become depraved. And that is what we've been seeing. You see, sometimes we're like, it's the LGBTQ alphabet thing. Yes, but it's actually degraded passions, improper lusts, and depraved minds as a result of rejecting truth.
On that topic, though, so the pushback you always get is then why did God put this in me? Well, God didn't put it in you.
Didn't put it in you.
It doesn't matter what it is, whether it's dressing like a furry or alcohol abuse, right? It's like those things. Basically, let's put it like this: to live the ways of the world, to be lustful, greedy, perverted, gluttonous. That's actually very easy to do, right? What is required of us to truly follow God's will is to actually not do that, to actually decline those things and have discipline. And so part of, well, let's take it out of religious context or spiritual context and just say, we live in a world that lacks personal accountability, that lacks discipline, that lacks the ability to say no to certain things, right? Just because you can doesn't mean you should drink a handle of alcohol. And that's where we're at.
Yeah.
So these kids are being taught that like, just whatever you feel,
right,
just do that.
Right.
I don't agree with that.
And for
you're not hurting anybody. And therein lies the other problem is define hurting anybody.
Right.
We're talking about the greater good for society as a whole. You're talking about radical individualism. What's best for you?
Yeah. And a small few.
Correct. And so is this better for society as a whole?
Right.
I would say no.
No. And so shout out to those parents who knew and say, go ahead and don't throw the shot put. Don't go ahead and walk out of school.
Yeah.
Go ahead.